You ever have one of those moments you spend, I don't know, weeks, maybe months perfecting a plan, only to find out that the real magic, the real breakthroughs, they only happen the second you actually do something? It's a super frustrating paradox, right? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why that happens, and more importantly, how you can escape that trap of just thinking and thinking.
Okay, I want you to really let this question sink in for a second. Are you busy, or are you making progress? Because we fill our days with so much stuff, research, endless meetings, organizing files, and it all feels so productive. But is it actual progress? Or is it just a really convincing way to hide from the risk of taking real action?
And this gets right to the heart of it. It's like a clash between two types of people. You've got the chess master, and then you have the naive builder. While the chess master is over there trying to predict every single possible move from the safety of the sidelines, the naive builder is already in the game. Yeah, they're failing, but they're also learning and adapting on the fly. They are interacting with reality, while the chess master is still stuck in theory land.
So, why do we get caught in this overthinking trap anyway? In our first section here, we're going to dive right into the psychology of what people call analysis paralysis.
This slide just illustrates those two approaches perfectly. The chess master is convinced they can win by mapping out the perfect sequence of moves before they even start. It's all this exhaustive top-down analysis. But the naive builder, they start with something simple, a basic prototype, an MVP, just to see how it works in the real world. They let their strategy emerge from the ground up, based on what actually happens.
So that exhaustive planning the chess master does, it's a perfect example of what some people, pretty bluntly, call mental masturbation. It's that endless loop of research and scenario planning that feels like work, but it produces absolutely zero real-world feedback. When you get right down to it, it's a defense mechanism. It's a way to avoid the ego-bruising reality of failure by staying safely tucked away in the realm of pure theory.
Okay, so if overthinking is such a massive trap, why do we keep falling into it? Well, a lot of the time, it's because we're measuring the wrong things. We end up creating this illusion of speed that keeps us super busy, but not actually productive.
You see this all the time, especially in software and project management. Development velocity is king. It's just a measure of your internal output, like how many tasks or story points a team gets done in a couple of weeks. And hey, it feels great to watch that number go up. It tells you, hey, we're busy, we're completing things, we're moving fast.
And right here, this is the fatal flaw. Having a high development velocity tells you nothing about whether the work is valuable. It doesn't measure quality, it doesn't measure user impact, and it sure doesn't measure market fit. A team can have an incredible development velocity while building something that is fundamentally useless, just going full speed in completely the wrong direction.
This table, though, it shows us a much better way. So instead of just measuring our internal output, like development velocity, we can focus on something called feedback velocity. This metric is all about getting external validation, about validated learning. See, the goal isn't just to be fast, it's to be fast at adapting to the market. The work isn't really done until real users have given you real feedback.
So why on earth does inaction feel so good sometimes? Well, it turns out our love of planning isn't just some strategic mistake. It's actually rooted deep in our cognitive biases. Our own brains trick us into thinking the easier path is the more effective one.
This quote from a Harvard study just nails it. It reveals a huge insight. The study found that the actual struggle required for deep learning, well, it feels like failure. And that feeling explains so much about why we prefer the comfort of planning over the discomfort of actually doing.
And this chart just brilliantly illustrates what the study found. Look at this. In a passive lecture, where information is just delivered smoothly to students, they felt like they learned a ton, but their actual test scores were low. But in an active classroom where they had to really struggle with the problems themselves, they felt like they learned less, but their scores were way, way higher.
So, here's the bottom line. Our brains are basically wired to prefer the smooth, easy experience of just consuming information, like reading another book or watching another tutorial. We mistake how easy it feels for actual progress. And at the same time, the messy, frustrating struggle of actually doing something, that disfluency of action, it feels like we're failing, even when it's the only way to really learn and get good at something.
Okay, so we know the trap, and we know the weird brain bias that keeps us stuck in it. Now, how do we get out? Let's look at two really powerful frameworks that are designed to turn action into learning, and to do it fast.
First up is the build, measure, learn loop. This comes from the whole lean startup world, and it's an incredibly disciplined process.
You start by building a minimum viable product. I mean the smallest possible thing you can make to test your main assumption. Then, you measure real user behavior, not what people say they'll do. Finally, you take that hard data and you learn from it. And you make a huge decision. Do we persevere on this path, or do we pivot to a whole new strategy?
Okay, our second framework comes from a military strategist, a guy named John Boyd. It's called the OODA loop. That's observe, orient, decide, and act. And this one is all about tempo. In a competitive situation, the winner isn't always the one with the best plan. It's the one who can cycle through this loop faster than their opponent, creating confusion and just grabbing the initiative.
Boyd used this fantastic metaphor of building a snowmobile to explain that orient phase. I mean, think about it. A snowmobile is made of a bunch of totally unrelated parts, right? You've got tank treads, a boat motor, bicycle handlebars. So to orient effectively, you have to break down your own biases and pull together different mental models from all over the place to create a new, more powerful view of reality. It's all about creative synthesis, not just boring analysis.
All right, we have covered the why. Now for the how. In our final section, let's get into some real concrete tactics you can start using today to crank up your own feedback velocity. If you want to get faster feedback, you have to get better at giving and receiving it. The SBI model is an amazing tool for this. So instead of making judgments, you just focus on the facts. You describe the situation, you state the specific behavior you observed, and you explain its impact. This keeps the feedback objective and actionable, not personal.
And I mean, the data on this is crystal clear. Immediate feedback can totally supercharge motivation. Waiting for a quarterly review? That's like trying to steer a ship using a map from last year's trip. It's real-time course correction that drives high performance.
Here's a really powerful metaphor to tie all of this together. Think of your mind as a graphics card. It can run all these internal simulations, these mental movies of what might happen. But those movies, they're super low resolution, they're unrendered. Real progress only happens when you switch to environmental processing. When you let the high-resolution, objective data from the real world render your reality for you. Planning is just the simulation. Doing is the real process.
So what are the big takeaways here? First, you gotta recognize and just reject that unproductive overanalysis. Second, learn to embrace the struggle of active learning. See it as a sign of progress. Third, start using frameworks like Build, Measure, Learn and the OODA loop to create real momentum. And finally, value real-world data way more than the illusion of some perfect plan.
And I want to leave you with this one last thought. For so many of us, the problem isn't a lack of talent or a lack of intelligence. The problem is waiting. We're waiting for a guarantee of success, for a level of certainty that just doesn't exist in a complex world. And that certainty, you're not going to find it in a book or a spreadsheet. It's forged in action. So the ultimate takeaway is just this. Stop waiting for the perfect moment or the flawless plan. Start moving, even if it's a small, imperfect step. Let the real world collide with your ideas. Let the environment, the market, your users, reality itself, render your strategy.